We are just one day away from the Holy War. That's right. Just a little over 24 hours to go till one of the most epic games in the Utah BYU rivalry's history. Who is going to come out on top? I think it's the Utah Utes, but we're breaking the game down on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time tuning into this show, make sure you like and subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You can download today. My name is JT Wistrcill, and I'm ecstatic to have on one of my great friends on this show, Bryan Brown, one of the best minds in the state when it comes to breaking down the game of football. We're talking about who's going to play well for Utah on both sides of the ball, and including how some BYU guys may perform in this one too, and also talk about if this is Kyle Whittingham's last ever Holy War game. But this is the last show we get to talk about it, so we're going to drop some predictions today. First, let's start with the Utah offense against the BYU defense. Just starting with an overview here, Bryan. I think the Utah Utes have the edge in this matchup because in this game, the best unit on the field, the best position group on the field for either side, no matter where you want to go, is the Utah offensive line. And the BYU defensive line, while good, I don't think they're going to be able to hang with this group up front for 60 minutes. So I give the Utah offense the edge on this side of the ball. How do you see this matchup?
Yeah, I wanted to do that scene. I can't remember what movie it's from where they're like, and we even finish each other's, and they say the word, and one of them says sentences, and the other one says sandwiches. But
yes,
we are so aligned on the fact that it is the offensive line for Utah, and I think it's likely the best position group on the field in terms of just sheer talent and depth and everything of that nature. I think this is a unique matchup because in years past, I think there were other position groups that you would automatically expect Utah to be better than BYU. Defensive backs, BYU might have the edge. Wide receiver group, I definitely believe that BYU has the edge. That being said, I think, this offense, the way that they played against Arizona State, they're coming in with a ton of confidence. And I think if you look at the overarching discourse of what the Utah football offense has been, I think the primary focus has been the lack of a downfield passing game. And that is only fixable in the sense of either you get new players, which Utah is not going to do at this point in the season. You find some internal development, which I just don't think is going to happen at this point in the season. We're week 8, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think you're going to see the magical evolution of a wide receiver group into, oh my gosh, now they have suddenly 3-4 potential NFL players. But I do think what you can do is you can be so good at something that you allow yourself some opportunities to go downfield. And right now, Utah is that good in the run game.
They are. It's been so much fun to watch. And this Utah offensive line, if you look at a Pro Football Focus, I mean, oh my word, they're the 4th best pass blocking grade, 2nd in pressure rate, 1st in knockdown rate, 1st in sack allowed, 8th in rushing yards per game too. They've just been tremendous. Let's not forget Arizona State last week. We've moved on from that game quickly because this is the Holy War, of course, but that was an ASU rush defense, led the Big 12 last year. 2nd this year heading into that game, and Utah steamrolled them. So it does start on the ground for me for this Utah team, and I do think Utah has a big day on the ground. I also think Devon Dampier is going to have a really nice performance in this one. I think he avoids a turnover. I have him going for 2 touchdowns in this one, 180 passing yards. He hasn't gone over 200 against some of the best teams he's played, and I just think he is going to be more active with his legs. I have him going for 80 yards rushing. I see Wayshawn Parker. He was on the injury report, but I still see him getting some touches here. 60 total yards. They'll probably use him some in the pass game. I have Naquari Rogers getting in. That's been Utah's goal line back, about 50 yards for him. Daniel Bray, 30 yards rushing for him. Receiving wise, I'm going to go Ryan Davis, about 80 yards because he's been pretty consistent. I know I've said it so many times, Bryan. This is finally the game to me. Tobias Merriweather just makes a couple of splash plays. Him and Dampier have been so close to connecting on a big play week in and week out that I'm just not ready to give up yet on Merriweather. I'll go Dallin Bentley to have a nice impact too. And I do not think Devon Dampier will be sacked. Hasn't been talked about a ton this week, but Bryan, this BYU pass rush, it's not been good this year. Their leaders in pressures are their 2 inside linebackers. They don't get after the quarterback well, and Devon Dampier has been the least sacked quarterback in the country, at least on an offensive line rate. All the 4 sacks Dampier's have been assigned to Dampier according to Pro Football Focus. So Yes, this BYU defense is going to win some of their matchups. I don't see Utah getting over 30 points in this game, but I do believe Utah will be able to move the ball, and I think they're getting in the end zone a few times here.
I would agree with that. I think these games inevitably find the moments and find your ways on breakthroughs. I do think this is going to be a slugfest, much like it was last year. They're two evenly matched teams. I think that's been the primary conversation from everybody, because we all tend to take the same approach when we break these games down. Is you look at statistics, right? You look at evaluations. You look at PFF grades. They are so even. But I think, to your point, the discrepancies are BYU doesn't have a John Henry Daly.
No.
Which is very interesting, right? Because John Henry Daly transferred from BYU. BYU does have a Keanu Tanuvasa, but Utah doesn't need one anymore. And that seems blasphemous to say, but that the interior group has done an excellent job this year. And I was skeptical when the coaching staff said, "Oh no, we believe we've got the guys." And I was like, yeah, sure you do. I've heard that in years past. I really can't trust anything that y'all say anymore.
No.
Legitimately, it is. I'll say it's a dope group. Like, they're dope. Like, they're having some fun out there. They're doing some good things. But realistically, what they are allowing is they're allowing guys like John Henry Daly and some others to apply that pressure. And I don't think BYU has an answer to the level of John Henry Daly and Logan Fano on the edges, which is surprising because they've got some dudes. Tausili Akano. We talked a little bit about Hunter Clegg. Haven't seen a ton of him this year. Thought from Asiata would be more of an edge player and bring some pressure. Just hasn't developed. And your point about Jack Kelly is valid. He is a great pressure applicator, but he should not be your primary sack leader, and that really is where they stand. And you also have to wonder, how effective is he? He was injured last week. Yeah. Obviously not listed on the availability report, but is that because he's guaranteed to play, or is it because he is completely recovered and healthy? And that's the part that, the availability report versus the injury report, there is a discrepancy. Yeah, he's 100% available. It doesn't mean that he's 100% healthy. And I know everybody's going to counter with, "Oh, nobody's 100% this season." I get that, but to some degree, you are 100% capable of playing in a game. So I think there's a lot of factors to weigh. I think during the course of this week, everything gets discussed to such a micro level that it can be a little nauseating at times, like a little disorienting, right? But I think to your point, like, stick true to what we've seen this year, the level of opponent that Utah has played. To your point about Devon Dampier, it does feel like this is his moment. Like, this is his opportunity to really come out, to establish himself as a Ute legend. I jokingly said that he could be a potential Heisman candidate. That was my hot take at the start of the season.
I said he'd finish the top 10.
Yeah. But he's looked every bit the part of that outside of one game. Yeah. And it was that one game that everybody has hyper fixated on. Utah's no good because of this. And Utah doesn't know that. You bounced back and just boat raced a West Virginia team that was not good, but hungry to try and do something to save their season. And you put the nail in the coffin and it was over, right? And we talked about UCLA. That's a really... Everybody buried UCLA. Now all of a sudden it's like, wait, UCLA is great. That's a really good football team. Look at what they're doing, right? And it's just like, so which one is it, right? Are we going to play this game or are we going to not? So I think to that end, like, you have to trust what you've seen from the University of Utah. This is going to be a fist fight in a phone booth, as Kyle Whittingham loves to say. And I think if you're comparing offenses, I'm just going to give a little bit of a lean and a little bit of a nod to the Utah offense because of the offensive line, because of the experience that Devon Dampier has, because of the fact that he plays bigger when the stage is brighter for the most part. I get the Texas Tech game. Everybody has one, right? But I think those things give you just that little bit of an edge. Now, when it comes to the off-the-field stuff, I think it's a more even matchup with Jason Beck and Aaron Roderick than maybe people are giving credit. But I do think that plays a little bit of a factor as well. And so, as we're breaking down this one, I do think if the NFL script writers took a day off and were writing the script for this game for Utah BYU, I do think that there would be a chapter where Devon Dampier stamps his legacy in this rivalry for this program and comes out and has a great game.
I agree. And the one thing that's clearly different too about Dampier in the Tech game is his health. He's clearly running and just moving differently. He wasn't on the injury report, but he clearly is just a different player in this one, which is massive for Utah. When you talk about how Dampier looked against Arizona State, the way the run game looked, the backs they have, Jason Beck and Dampier just getting more comfortable in this form of the Utah offense too, right? Because there's been like the usage of tight ends and things a bit different. So, but I really believe the difference is Dampier's legs and that Utah offensive line. But how about the other side of the ball? What are the differences there? That's been a good BYU offense so far, but this will be by far the best defense they've seen. So which Utah defenders are going to step up to try and take down Bear Bachmeier and the BYU offense? We're going to tell you in one moment. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Utah Utes, I'm choosing Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu. Heck, let's just go the entire offensive line. They delivered in a massive way, right? We already talked about that. Arizona State vaunted rush defense. Nope, it was the Utah offensive line that ran all over them all game long. Their performance has been incredible all year. It's not a fluke. It's been a streak. And just like those guys delivered last week, the O-Block, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash streaks. You can save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including 100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. This promo ends November 18th. Get your DoorDash streak started today. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, you get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always helps you your blind side covered. Need parts fast for your project? Supply House has next day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on the job where every detail matters. Their trade master perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. You can join the free trade master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real services with Supply House. There's a lot of elite units on the field when these two teams face off. I do believe the Utah offense is elite, Brian. I believe that the BYU defense is elite. I believe that Utah defense is too. I am not ready to say that about the BYU offense. Is the run game been really impressive? It has. LJ Martin, the offensive line for the Cougars, have been nice. But I'm also just going to say this. This schedule has been pretty kind to BYU overall. This is by far the best defense they will have played so far this year. I haven't seen a player the caliber of John Henry Daly on this schedule, and I want to see Bear Bachmeier perform against a legit team. Let's not forget, he was 12 for 29, 2 picks last week, was good on the ground, 88 carries, 2 touchdowns. I get that. But against this Utah defense is another beast. I think this is an opportunity for Morgan Scalley and this Utah defense to feast on a true freshman quarterback and an offense that still has to prove what they can be against a legit defense.
I do think a lot of that is valid. And you mentioned that BYU hasn't faced a player the caliber of John Henry Daly to this point. They will at some point when they travel to Texas Tech and take on the Red Raiders. That point is not here, right? But I think the more overarching point is that we still don't really know who Bear Bachmeier is outside of a guy who can get it done with his legs, a unit. He is yeah. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. The dude is thick in the lower half, a lot of sand in the pants, as Mike Mayock would describe some offensive linemen. And that does allow him a lot of opportunity in the run game. But when people compared him to Tim Tebow in the offseason, the preseason, I don't think they expected him to match the passing numbers the way that Tebow did, in the sense of it's not a high completion rate. And this is an offense where you can actually throw a lot of completions. And so to that effect, I think there is some consternation about what Bear Bachmeier can do in this game. Utah's got to stop him in the run game, though. And that's really what you have to do, is you have to stop this rushing attack. You have to limit the big plays. You have to find a way to get A-Rod off of his out of his bag, because when Aaron Roderick is in his bag and making play calls and he's feeling the vibes, he's one of the best player callers in the country. And that is the problem with vibey play callers, is that when they're in the zone, it's almost unbeatable. Like, you just can't stop them. When they are not, now you're in trouble, right? And we really haven't seen one of those games where he's just seemed off. And so Utah has to do their best to try and put that, from the very jump, right? To be physical and I think it's an interesting matchup with this BYU offensive line against this Utah defensive line. I think that without a doubt, Morgan Scalley's got some stuff, some wrinkles, maybe some small things that he's probably been working on. I think Utah's adequately managed the loss of injury in the defensive backfield. But I think those are two units in terms of the defensive backs and the safeties that really, really need to step up this week. And also, I think, Lander Barton has not been the superstar that we expected him to be. And I wonder if Utah doesn't unleash him a little bit this week. So there's a lot of that kind of questions, right? And that's how every game should be approached. What's going to happen with this? What's going to happen with that? If you want me to just predict stuff, yeah, I can throw out predictions. Carson Kafusi, 17 sacks. It's going to be awesome. Watch it, right? Nobody cares about that stuff. But I think when you have those questions about, I wonder how this goes, right? You mentioned the tight ends for Utah. Carson Ryan is going up against a former team. Now, he's only there for a year and maybe even a little bit less in terms of how the season went last year, because you transfer in, you're there for honestly less than a calendar year. But I think there's a lot of that kind of element to this game and this matchup. I think Utah's defense is capable. I don't know that we've seen Utah's defense play their best game yet. I think they've been very solid, if not outstanding, for most of the year. But I think there's still room for improvement and growth. I don't think we're anywhere near the ceiling. And so I wonder, is this the game where they finally show that?
Which is good. They're not where they're going to be, because even this week against BYU, they're going to see their last 4 games: Cincinnati, Baylor, Kansas State, Kansas. Those quarterbacks they're going to face, wow, that's a lot for Utah coming up in that stretch. So you absolutely have to get better defensively. You mentioned Lander Barton having a big game, so maybe you did squeak a peek at my prediction sheet somehow, because I do think this is going to be Lander's best game on the season so far. I'm really excited to see this Utah defense get after things. Lander, I think, will play his best game, lead Utah in tackles here. I think Utah is going to be able to rough up Bear a little bit too. Bear has performed well at times, but also this Utah defense, according to Pro Football Focus, 3rd best pass rush win rate in the country. And we know John Henry Daly, 8 sacks. That's a pretty good number. And Bear Bachmeier, when under pressure, his PFF grade is below 50. It's not been good. I think Utah is going to be able to get pressure. I think they're going to force Bear into some turnovers here too. I have 2 picks, one for Jackson Benny, one for Smith Snowden, which with all the Smith Snowden drama this offseason, I would just absolutely love if he picked one off, maybe even recreate the Francis Bernard moment. Obviously a little different because he didn't go to BYU, but that would be absolutely sensational if he could do that too. And I do think Utah gets to Bear 3 times with some sacks in there. Fano gets a revenge one against BYU. Lander getting home as well. I think his Utah defense has a really good day. I predicted 27-20. So I do have this Utah defense holding BYU's offense in check for a lot of this game, Brian.
I would be curious to see how it goes, because I think Utah's defense in the years past has had a tendency to allow a lot early on. And I would not be surprised if this BYU rushing attack catches them off guard a little bit in that regard.
And they have struggled with tackling, to your point.
They Utah's. Have, and I think the hard part about watching film is it never gives you an accurate portrayal of what a player actually looks like in person, right? And I think you're going to look at Bear Bachmeier and think, okay, he's really big, he's a powerful runner, but we can do this, this, and this. And it's different when you get out in the game and actually have to do it. I thought it was interesting that Nate Johnson was a scout team player of the week last week for the work that he did, mimicking, I'm sure, started out mimicking Sam Levitt, but also mimicking Jeff Sims.
Yeah.
And that probably helped Utah a little bit in limiting that rushing attack. I don't think Utah has to put pressure on Bear. We'll see. But I do think that if you can disguise some coverages and mix things up and make it, this is the part where it comes down to those coaching staffs knowing each other so well. Utah is not a team that traditionally runs a lot of quarters coverage. This may be a game where maybe you do. Maybe you try to do some disguises and throw some things off. And again, as I talked about, you want to force Aaron Roderick off of his pivot. That's a defensive term, but you want to bump and nudge and push that. And so I think, to your point, if you really want to get Bear unsettled, where he's best is if he's got that ability to run, right? And so if you cage rush, let John Henry Daly do his thing. I think that he can have some success against these BYU tackles, bring some pressure from various areas. But I do think that where your success rate is the highest is if you can confuse him and disguise your coverages in a way that makes him have to think. And he is so smart and capable in that if he does have to think, that dings the confidence a little bit. And then I think you could see, him potentially have that many turnovers.
Do you know who leads Utah in tackles on the season?
Off the top of my head, I'd say Teo Johnson, but the answer is no.
It's John Henry Daly. Okay. He's tied for Jonathan Hall with 30. Like, that's insane, just the type of season that John Henry Daly's put together. And yeah, like we talked about, Utah has to tackle better. Like, LJ Martin's been good, and Utah at times has had some issues stopping the run. I think a lot of that, though, has been once they've gotten wore down in the fourth quarter against Tech. So I do expect Utah to perform better against LJ Martin. Be cued in on that, be locked in. It's the Holy War. We know it's going to be an absolutely epic clash, and this could be Kyle Whittingham's final Holy War. Will it be? We're going to give our thoughts in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Rujit. What do you get when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla riding a TX? That is a mouthful. Confidence, pure confidence. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rujit Go Long. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rujit Go Long. That's exactly where Rujit's Go Long comes in. This isn't just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. Go Long combines two doctor-trusted medicines in one dual-action formula, so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to RUGIET.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, for 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Make sure to use our code so you know that Locked On sent you. You can head over to Rujit today. And today's episode of Locked On Utes is also brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. What a matchup this is going to be, Utah and BYU. But of course, it's not the only matchup going on, because the NFL is back. And how great has it been to have football and FanDuel's offers you don't want to miss? NFL, college, whatever it may be. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if yours wins. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. Brian, spreads 3.5. I already said my prediction, 27-20. Utah is covering to me, but I know you got your eyes on some other interesting bets going into this game on FanDuel.
Yeah, this is not a game where I love the outcome bets at all, but I do love some of the things that are happening on the side. I love the first quarter total. It's over under 9.5. I would hang that on the under for sure. That's the one that seems very tasty to me. There's some other ones out there in terms of halftime scores and spreads that I like as well. But I'm not a betting man, so I'm just letting you know that maybe do some research, maybe look at a little history and see what first quarter totals for the for this game in the past have been like.
Yeah, as you mentioned, that 9.5 number, the last year's game would not have hit that. Both defenses are in some ways better than the offenses they're going to be facing on paper too. So however you're feeling, head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today. Bryan Brown, I believe this is Kyle Whittingham's last Holy War. Where are you at on that topic as we stand here today?
I will believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
And I know that's one of those things. It is a conversation that we do have to have. It does feel like this year is setting up a little bit to potentially be Kyle's last. But I think he has, as we've seen what's happened with college football, and has seen his cohorts lose jobs midseason, sometimes 2-3 games into the season, which to me is just, that's the chaotic part about it, right? Like we talked a little bit off air about James Franklin getting fired and let go, and I don't think it was unjustified because I think you hit a point where people have just had enough. What I do think is becoming way too common is guys getting let go with 3, 4, 5 games left in the season. I don't think that's fair to players. I think you put support staffs and other staffs in a real bind because now these people are forced to look out for the players while also trying to line up jobs for the next year. And I think it's unfair in a lot of ways. And so I hope that with some of these changes that we're seeing with the NCAA calendar, that starts to change and go back to a little bit more of a normal circumstance where, coaches at least get to finish out the year. But I think to that end, I think you could go either way off that with Whittingham, right? He may see that this is, the landscape of college football where people are not going to be patient. And so if you have a good year, it's the time to leave. He may be rejuvenated by the fact that they've made a lot of good changes and a lot of positive growth this year. And you get Devon Dampier back next year. And that was a big deal with Cam Rising. And he really likes Devon Dampier. He loved Cam Rising. So I don't know if Devon Dampier gets keys to the truck or not yet. We'll find out, I'm sure, at some point, thanks to the Utah social media team. But I do think that this is something that Kyle's going to do what Kyle's going to do, and he's earned that right. And so if it does end up being his last game, I hope that Utah sends him out with a positive finish. But I think, Kyle's going to be dismissive of it. I think the team's going to be dismissive of it. I think if this game was being played at the right time of year, at the end of the season, maybe it's a bigger topic of conversation. But for now, there's just so much more to come. Like, if Utah makes a run, and this is best case scenario, makes a run throughout the college football playoff, why wouldn't Kyle Whittingham come back for one more year?
I can totally see that world. That's the thing. I feel like it's his last one just because it was supposed to be last year, but you never know. You never know in this world, and it's going to be so fascinating to see. But look, it's almost time to play this thing, Brian. I think my final thoughts going into this holy war is this is an opportunity for this Utah team to prove you are one of the premier teams in the Big 12. We think you are right now, but you did not look good against Tech. Now, we still think that was more good Tech than bad Utah, but this is your opportunity to prove, hey, let's beat another contender in this conference as we stand here today. That's what BYU is. Let's see if Devon Dampier can deliver in a big game like this in a hostile environment on the road. I think he can, but this will be the toughest. This will be one of the toughest atmospheres he's ever played in. The stakes of this rivalry. I still think Dampier's legs. He's going to make a couple plays. Just the it factor he has, the wild plays, he makes it happen. The offensive line is there, and I think Morgan Scalley is going to do really well against a true freshman quarterback. BYU will make some plays. That rushing attack is still there, but I think Utah plays their most complete game on the season and gets a win. Brian, your final thoughts on the 2025 Holy War? As you're muted, my friend.
Always have to be reminded of that.
There you go.
Can I ask you a question before we get into that? I'm sorry.
Go for it.
It's just I can't get this out of my head. What would you do if you were Kyle Whittingham?
Oh, like would I go or not? That's an interesting one. You're not wrong. I might stay another year if I got Devon Dampier. That's a really good point. You also lose those 5 offensive linemen though, so that's an interesting topic. You've might stick around.
Pretty good ones coming up behind him too.
I still got the pass. I mean, for me, I still love talking about Utah football, right? So I'd want to keep going maybe, but I don't know. I also like if Morgan Scalley is the head coach in waiting, like. How long are you going to make Morgan wait? I feel like that's where it's interested in their relationship dynamic too. But I understand this is still Kyle's team right now. So that's what makes this very interesting. What would you do?
If it were me, I would have to wait to see how the season goes and how the season ends. I know for sure for a fact that Kyle Whittingham hasn't paid a second thought to it.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's the part that I think is kind of, you were talking about the breakdown and you always do such a good job of highlighting the positive of what Utah's going to do, right? And I think these games always come down to this, back and forth slugfest where Devon Dampier can play a great game and it can be 22-20, right? And I've been kind of obsessed with this idea of and lately. Like Utah has a really good, short, quick passing game, and they need to be better at the deep field throws, right? Kyle Whittingham, this could be his last year, and Morgan Scalley is ready to take the reins, and I think both of those things are true. I do kind of wonder if there isn't like a little bit of synergy that's now developed where, Morgan Scalley has been able to have some more say, have more responsibility, and have more participation, and maybe that helps this thing draw out. I think in terms of how I'm evaluating this game, I think there is, again, I think if it was at the end of the season, I think that would be more of a factor. I think at this point in time, where we stand right now, I think it's still so far out, and I think that's a factor too. Because Utah still has so much belief and knowledge of where they've been, what they've been through, where they want to go, and what they want to accomplish. And so because of that, I believe that Utah is going to come out, and I say this word, I think they're going to dominate in phases of this game and against this BYU football team in a way that won't be as expected as everybody else thinks. Mm-hmm. And I think that, we haven't talked a whole lot about special teams. That's an opportunity for Utah to really make some inroads. We saw it last week at the blocked field goal. There could be a lot of opportunities there. Jay Hill is a special teams expert. I have to wonder if it is really Kyle Whittingham's last year, if he doesn't have a little extra in the tank. And maybe Kyle knows in the back of his mind that it is. And so he's going to throw everything he can into the special teams this week and making it great, right? Scalley's going to throw everything he can into the special teams and making it great. I just feel like these are two really, really good football teams, and there's enough differences that it makes it so hard to predict this game. But I do feel like that Utah finds a way to establish some domination in this game. I do feel like they find a way to get a win. And what I mean by that is I don't know that the score is going to indicate that they were, it's not going to be like a blowout of like 42-20.
Oh,
but I do think, oh man, what Utah fan wouldn't?
Yeah.
But I do feel like they find a way to show very convincingly like this is the best football team in the state.
I agree. And that's what I hope happens. But at the end of the day, we're done talking about it. It's just time to go play the dang thing. And we are fired up to see it get underway. Bryan Brown, thank you so much for joining my friend. Make sure you guys give him a follow at Brown Bear SLC on X. Thank you again, sir.
Always a pleasure. I appreciate it, man.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. A reminder, I'll be going live as soon as the game ends tomorrow night, talking all things Utah, BYU. Hopefully not an athletic director controversy in the press conference, but if there is one, I'll be there to talk about it. We appreciate all of you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day of the week, and we look forward to talking all things Utah, BYU this weekend and next week. Enjoy the Holy War, everyone.